Um, so to start any part, you need to make a sketch. So you can just click on the Sketch tab and make a new sketch. You will click whatever plane you want to draw onto. And there's a bunch of little tools over here to help you draw whatever you need. You can just draw lines if you want, or escape will exit out of that. You just left click to draw things if you here making a circle based on its center point. If things connect up, then it'll shade in and yeah. There's a bunch of different tools. There's making straight lines, circles, splines, which is just any funky curve. You can make rectangles with this tool, and there are lots of different types of arcs that you can make. This one is a tangent arc, so whatever line you decide to go from, it'll be tangent to that. So same thing with a center point arc. You can just draw it however you need, and sometimes it gets a little fiddly to get it to do what you want, but whatever works. Right now I'm just going to show you all the basic things, and we'll actually make something. You need an ellipse. You just draw the two radiuses, and polygons. Polygons have extra parameters over here. You can change the number of vertices, and you can change the radius. And for all of these different things, you can dimension them. Right now I'm in inches. The first dimension that you do will scale everything to everything that you've already made to whatever that dimension is, and then from there you can actually dimension things. If you drag from right to left, then it'll select everything that it touches. If you drag left to right, then it only selects the ones that it fully encompasses, only the features that it fully covers. There's just a bunch of little controls to get the hang of. Generally, whatever you want to make, like if we want to make a box right now, you don't really have to worry about whatever dimensions it is when you first do it. Just try and make it look however you want. And because after that you can always dimension it to whatever you need. If your sketch is fully dimensioned, then you can't drag anything around, and everything is fully defined, and there won't be a little minus sign here. Like if there's a minus sign here, that means it's not fully defined, and if you try to use it with like a laser printer or a 3D printer, it's going to screw up, and it won't know what to do because it doesn't know how big it is. Yes, John?
But I know we want to fully define things.
Why else do you need to make an accurate part? It needs to be fully defined. I don't know. But
what happens if it's all black and I can still move stuff around?
it won't be. If it's blue, that means something can move.
Yeah, that's how you can help figure out what's on the first return.
Yeah, it's a good idea. So there's another way to fully define your features other than dimensioning, and that's different constraints. So if you select anything, you'll see on this left side, you'll see different relations. like Jazz said over there, there's a fixed relation, and that'll just put it exactly where it is. But SolidWorks does not like the fixed relation, and it will. It doesn't like that, so I don't recommend it. But if you select any two items, then a list of relations will pop up that you can add. You can if I know that this point, the center point of this arc, if I know that has to be on this line, I can select the two of them and make them coincident, so they'll be on the same line. And now I'm over-defined. That's what the plus means, which isn't always an issue. It's just and I'm fully defined again. So using all this stuff, there's just a whole bunch of different tools to make a fully defined sketch. And yeah, if you hover over any line, you can find its center point, and that's a lot of times very useful. And there's also anything that you do draw, you can make it a construction line, which just means it's not an actual part, but it's just there for reference for later. And now, if I know that I want this line to be perfectly vertical, I can select it and just tell it to be vertical. Or I can tell it to be horizontal, whatever works. You can just select the relations and delete them as you go if you need to. But yeah. Construction lines also need to be defined. Although the endpoints don't really matter as long as you know like where they are in relation. So even though I can still extend this, it'll still say it's fully defined because it's not a physical part. Now, I think that's good for the 2D stuff. If you go over to features, you have a couple different options to make an actual 3D part. You can do an extruded base, which you can change how far out you want this part to become, and you can make any 3D part that way. You can always go back and change it by right-clicking the feature on your feature tree. By the way, that's what that left whole table is called. It'll pop up with everything that you've made so far in order. You can come up here and say Edit Feature. You can change the width. You can change the direction. There's other options here, like midplane, and then it'll extrude equally either direction. If you offset it, then offset from surface, you need an actual surface, which I don't have yet. Handy thing about SolidWorks that some other like CAD programs like Inventor, you can undo just whatever. Inventor doesn't like undoing. That's just a shame. Another way to make a 3D part would be revolving a base. So here I have my part revolving around that construction line that we made earlier, and it'll make a little donut. If the construction line was unrelated to what I wanted, and I want it to revolve around something else, I can just select axis of revolution and change what I want it to revolve around. So that's how you can make good spherical or cylindrical. Or if the part that you want can be easily rotated around something, then this is a good way to do it. You can also change how far it rotates. If I only need it to go 180 degrees around, I can do that. If I want it to rotate around here, I can do that. Just going to change the back. Now, a lot of the parts that you might need to make have lots of detail, and you can't do all that with just one sketch. So if you get a part to sort of how you want it, let's say I need a hole right in the middle of this, but I can't really put that into the sketch. I can, oh, by the way, if you want to rotate around, you just hold middle click. Left click will select a feature or a face or anything, and right clicking will open up a bunch of different options. Like I came over here and right clicked, and that's how I edited the feature. You can also hide whatever feature I don't want to see, I guess. If you have trouble maneuvering around, you can hit spacebar and that'll pop up this box, and whatever you select, that's the view it'll snap to, which can be handy if you get lost and confused. But otherwise, middle click to just drag around. Here I just left clicked on this face, and I can edit the feature that I just made from here, or I can make a new sketch. Hit space to make it better. Now, let's say I want an ellipse in the middle of it. This is very undefined. It doesn't know where it is. It's fine. But because I selected it at the center, and that automatically constrained the center of the ellipse to the center of the circle of our sketch. And if I know that I want my ellipse to just be very horizontal, I can select one of these endpoints and select the middle, and I can say that these are going to be, did I click? Yeah. Horizontal to each other. You know what it is. I got all twisted around. It'd be hard to maneuver around, and you get lost to your axes, which are always right here if you get lost with. So now, yeah, these are perfectly horizontal to each other. And now there's a few different ways I can fully define this. I can define the distance of one of my radius, and I'll have to define the other one. I can define that just by here, or I can define it by like if there's another feature that you're making a sketch on, you can convert whatever you select on a different feature, and that'll make another sketch part. There's a lot of, this is a very powerful tool, and there's lots of things, just a bunch of little things to learn. They have a whole class on it. I recommend it. But if I know that this is gonna touch, I can make them coincident again. And now that I have a second feature, I can come over here and I can also save and exit my sketch from up there if I need to, or I can just escape, or lots of different ways. Now if I need to make a cut, right now I don't have anything selected to make a cut on, so it'll try and make me make a new sketch. But I can always just select my sketch by clicking on it over here, or on the actual object, and extrude a cut. There's pretty much the same options as with an extruded base. An extruded base adds material, extruded cut removes it. Here it's just a blind cut, so it'll just go whatever distance you tell it and cut out whatever material is there. Or I can go through all and it'll go just as far as it needs to. If I go up to next, it'll only cut the surface, it'll only cut objects, and it won't try and cut out negative space or what. like it'll cut out whatever's in orange, and you just flip to whatever you need. Same sort of way as the revolved base, there's a revolved cut, but there's no axis of revolution for me, so I can't really do that, but I can go back, right click, and edit the sketch pretty easily and just add a construction line. I just left clicked it and for construction. But anyways, it doesn't like this. Why not? Intersecting contours. I bet it doesn't like that I made this coincident. So if I know the distance that I want it to be from the outside edge, there's things called, in sketches, there's like reference items, I guess. There's reference lines, like construction lines and points, and in 3D space there's reference planes. So if I just want to add a point and I make it coincident to this right here and make them horizontal to each other, then I can dimension it. Otherwise I wouldn't be able to, because it would just want me to dimension the line. So I needed to make an extra point to dimension to. Yeah. Do you guys want to see some things that I've made in the past? Okay. It's going to do it anyways. To remember. Yeah. Oh, I put them out here, didn't I? So, this is what I made for the robot last year. And Solidworks also has things called assemblies, where you just throw a bunch of parts together. And there are a bunch of different mates you can make to make them interact with each other. So, this is something that we had 3D printed earlier. It's a servo fits right in this cavity right here and drives this little finger, which drives the other finger, and just to pick up a dowel. When I was first making this, I almost made it impossible. Like, the servo would have fit in there, but it would have been impossible to put the servo into the thing. So it's a very important thing to think about when you're designing something in SolidWorks. Just because you can make it in SolidWorks doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a good part in reality. Because if there's something that you can't actually take apart, then you won't be able to put it together. Like, I can show you some of the mates. Mates are things that you, like the relationships in just a part. They're different things that change how your different parts will interact with each other. So, here, I'll just delete this. So I just deleted the gear mate, So now when these rotate, they'll just go right through each other and the gears don't interact at all. Now I can mate, in this case, I'll want to mate these two circles, just because as they rotate, then that's they'll rotate with each other with a gear mate. But there's lots of different mates we can do. We could make them concentric, but there's another mate already, so we don't want to do that. Under mechanical mates, you'll find the gear mate. And the gear ratio is just how fast one will turn, like, in reference to the other. So by default, it's based on their diameters. So right now the gear mate was like 2.5 to 1. So as this one rotates once, the other one will rotate 2.5 times, which is not what we want. So I'm going to go back here and edit the feature, edit the mate. I want a 1-to-1 ratio. And there we go. So now for every degree that this circle will rotate, this circle will now rotate. Actually getting the gears to mesh with each other is a little bit tougher, but getting them to rotate with each other isn't too bad. And there's lots of different mates here, like the rack and pinion I'm sure we'll use later because we're doing that. This graphics was the whole class. This was our semester project in that class. We made a steam engine. So we modeled every part and made drawings for every part, which we don't need to cover drawings, I don't think. No. So, can you what? Oh boy. That's not right, but that's fine. But Solidworks is a very powerful tool just to get whatever little details you want. Like there are things inside of here, and I can show you. That's called a section view, and it'll just let you cut apart whatever part or assembly you want. I'm not sure how useful that will be for us, but I don't know. Do you guys have any questions? Yes.
How do you make the gears?
How do you make the gears?
Yeah, how do you make the gears?
Yeah, that was trial and error.
Did you like cut those all out individually?
Yes, patterns. That's something. What's that? So, by the way, there's something called a rollback feature, where if you just grab this bar and go backwards, it'll go backwards sort of in time. So now that hole's not there and stuff, but the order that you do things is very important. So, to make the gears was a little funky. I used a lot of these construction circles, and then I modeled just one of these segments. I just Like I modeled just this, and then I made a circular pattern, which I can show you. Hoping to just, I don't want to actually delete it all. That's the issue. Yeah. Here, I'll just make a new part. Control N, make a new part. So the idea with any sketch is to make just something simple that looks kind of like how you want it. That's kind of how I want it, right? And I made all these tangent to each other just already. And I know that at least these two are going to be I'm going to say that these 2 points are just going to go ahead and touch that center circle. Yeah. And I know this will too. Alright. So now that I have this stuff that looks kind of like one tooth, I can come up here to sketch patterns and go for a circular sketch pattern. Right here it's asking for what I should rotate around when I make them, and here I selected entities to pattern, and entities just really anything at all. And I'm not sure quite how many this will make, so I'll just go up until it looks right. And that looks pretty close to right. And now that I have this, you'll see that as I change one, it'll change all of them, because they're still associated with each other. And now I have something that looks kind of like a gear. And of course nothing is actually dimensioned, and everything can be funky. But that's the principle of circular patterns and how to make a gear. Anything else? Yeah?
I didn't put different parts into the same model.
Right. Okay. You can go to File and Make Assembly from Part. And begin assembly. Oh, whoops! I selected the wrong thing. Yeah. Don't want to save that. Yeah, sorry. Make assembly from part. Make sure you select whatever you want to actually be in your part, and then just press OK. And now I have just one part. Notice it can't move at all, which isn't really what I want for a gear. And see this F here? That means it's fixed. So if I right click it and select float, then now I can move it wherever I want. Of course, it's not much of assembly with just one part, so I can come up here, insert more components. It'll show you all the components that you have open, or you can browse for more. And I know I want the other parts of my hand. That's the idea of adding parts together, and now there's a whole bunch of different things that we got to do to actually constrain them together. I can show you some of those mates. You just click mate and it'll automatically suggest mates based on what you click. These two together, it guessed that I want to make them concentric, which is a good guess. But that's, if you look, that's facing the wrong direction. And you see these two arrows here, we can flip the mate alignment and it'll flip it over. Because at least the concentric mate, it cares which direction it's going. And there we go. Of course, everything is still flying around, which isn't great. So one thing I could do is take my base and fix it, which assemblies don't mind quite as much if you fix or anchor things. This isn't quite right either. No. I know that I can't have this keep going through everything, so I could make these two planes so that they're coincident to each other. So now this part at least is all right and good, and I know that this finger will also be on the same level. So if I make these two together, then at least that's on the right plane this direction. Now, there's not really much over here to tell it to stay on, but something about the servo I know is that the midpoint of this circle is halfway in between these two, and I know that the servo head is halfway in between these two planes, this and this plane, and there's something called a width mate, which is an advanced mate. And a width mate, you just need to select two planes on one part and select two planes on the other part, and it will automatically center it for you, which is handy. So now I got it constrained in that direction. And at least for alignment purposes, I can come over here, and I know that those won't be coincident to each other, but I know that they will be parallel. So I can say that too. If I position it at least to kind of where it needs to be, then I can, I don't remember if I can do this. I don't think I can, but I don't remember how I actually constrained this one. It's not good. Actually, right now I just have this able to move up or down, which I know isn't right, but I did that for alignment, so I can go back and delete whatever I need. Yeah. Okay.
And for this night specifically, I was told we had to get out here before 7. So
That's fine.
it is quite time.
I'm just talking now. It's
Yeah,
just...
no, you're fine.